The observation deck of the celestial traverse hummed with the quiet efficiency of a dozen species working in proximity. Crystalline data screens flickered with atmospheric readings, biological surveys, and gravitational measurements from the planet below. But none of the assembled xenobiologists were watching their stations. They were watching Mira Voss. The human sat at her workstation near the viewport, her posture relaxed despite the small creature wrapped around her left forearm like a living bracelet. The creature, designated Felis diminutus in the preliminary reports but affectionately called Ricky by Mira, was no larger than a human hand. Its fur shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with its rapid heartbeat, a defense mechanism triggered by fear or distress. Mira's right hand moved across the holographic keyboard with practiced ease, completing her weekly ecosystem analysis report as if nothing unusual was happening. "Extraordinary," whispered Velthar, a saurian researcher whose scales rippled with barely contained fascination. Their species had evolved from apex predators, and the concept of not immediately consuming or discarding a frightened prey animal was fundamentally alien to them. Beside Velthar, Coordinator Jess, a four-armed Quillarian with compound eyes that could track multiple targets simultaneously, leaned forward. "How long has the creature been attached?" 47 standard minutes, replied Dr. Oren, a centaurian whose elongated skull housed a brain capable of perfect time perception. "She retrieved it from the containment bay after it escaped during the feeding cycle. The cub had been part of a conservation sample collected from the forest moon orbiting Kepler 442b. The species was endangered, threatened by the rapid climate shifts affecting their habitat. The research team had collected several specimens for study and potential relocation, but this particular juvenile had proven problematic. It refused to eat. It trembled constantly, and it had bitten 3 researchers who'd attempted to handle it with standard containment protocols. Then Mira Voss had walked into the bay. The human had approached slowly, making soft clicking sounds with her tongue, a noise that should have meant nothing to an alien species from a world humanity had only discovered 6 months ago. Yet the cub had responded, its luminescent patterns shifting from frantic red to cautious amber. When Mira extended her arm, the cub had climbed onto it and refused to let go. Now, nearly an hour later, the creature still clung to her forearm, its tiny claws gripping her uniform sleeve. Its patterns had stabilized to a soft blue-green, indicating a state of calm that the monitoring equipment had never registered before. "The human is completing her work while immobilized," Velthar observed, their translator struggling to convey the mixture of confusion and awe in their native clicks. "Her efficiency has not decreased." It was true. Mira's report scrolled across her screen at the same pace as always. She had adapted her typing style to compensate for the loss of her dominant hand, her right hand darting across the interface with increased speed and precision. When she needed to reference a data pad to her left, she simply rotated her chair rather than disturb the clinging cub. "Humans," Jess muttered, all 4 arms gesturing in a pattern that indicated philosophical bewilderment. "They are the only species I know that will handicap themselves for the comfort of another creature." "Not just any creature," Dr. Oren corrected, their voice carrying the measured tones of someone making an important distinction. "One that has no bond to her, no familial connection, no symbiotic relationship. It is simply small and frightened." The observation deck fell silent as the assembled researchers processed this. In Quillarian culture, resources were allocated based on utility and kinship bonds. A frightened, non-productive juvenile from another species would be sedated and stored until it could be processed efficiently. The idea of letting it disrupt workflow was absurd. The saurians would have eaten it, the centaurians, despite their advanced philosophy, would have applied medical intervention, a cocktail of chemicals to force calm, to make the creature compliant and manageable. But Mira Voss simply let it cling to her arm and adjusted her work accordingly. "Query," Velthar addressed the room. "How many reports exist of humans exhibiting this behavior pattern?" Dr. Oren's eyes glowed with the telltale sign of accessing their neural implants. Cross-referencing historical data from human observation posts. Thousands of documented instances. Humans have been observed caring for injured prey animals, adopting creatures from other species, and even risking personal safety to retrieve animals from dangerous situations. But why? Jess's voice carried genuine confusion. What evolutionary advantage does this provide? None that we can measure, Dr. Oren admitted. Yet humanity thrived on their homeworld despite dedicating significant resources to creatures that provided no survival benefit. They call them pets. They form emotional bonds with them. They grieve when they die. Mira shifted in her chair, and every researcher tensed. But she was merely adjusting her posture, ensuring that Ricky remained comfortable on her arm. The cub's patterns had deepened to a rich indigo, the color their preliminary scans had associated with contentment and sleep. "She's sacrificing her dominant hand," Velthar said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in their predatory mind. "Because the creature trusts that specific location, moving it would break the trust. Humans value trust," Dr. Oren explained, "even with species they've never encountered before, especially with the small, the frightened, the vulnerable." Coordinator Jess made a gesture of respect with all four arms. "This is why they lead the Galactic Council's conservation efforts. This is why they're dangerous," Velthar countered, though their tone held no malice. "Any species that will handicap themselves for another's comfort, that will adapt rather than force adaptation. They will inspire loyalty in ways we cannot predict or defend against." On her screen, Mira completed the final section of her report. She reviewed it with her right hand, made 2 minor corrections, and transmitted it to the central database. The whole process had taken exactly as long as it usually did. Then, moving with glacial slowness, she reached across with her right hand and gently stroked the cub's head with 2 fingers. Ricky's patterns flared bright gold, pure joy according to their analysis, and the creature finally loosened its grip, crawling up Mira's arm to curl against her shoulder. Mira smiled, stood, and walked toward the containment bay to return Ricky to a modified habitat, one she'd already requested, with softer materials and ambient sounds similar to the creature's homeworld. The researchers watched her go. "Humanity? Fuck yeah," Dr. Oren said quietly, using the phrase they'd learned from human crew members. Nobody disagreed.